Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Cynthia Lawson Jaramillo. In case you haven't attended one of our events before, I'm accompanied by Valentina Palacios Velásquez. We're both from the Parsons Deed Research Lab. We are celebrating our quinceañera this fall. So this fall marks the 15 years since we started doing this work. Initially started working with a community of weavers in San Lucas Toliman, Guatemala. I am joining you from the land of the Lenni Lenape people. I want to acknowledge that this land was not ceded at any point in time by our indigenous communities, and in fact was stolen, and we continue to be on stolen land. And I bring this up is for two reasons. One, there was a horrific event on indigenous lands in Canada this past week. You may be following it in the news. So I want to acknowledge that our indigenous comrades have been going through, again, a re-traumatization that happens since they were colonized. And the second is because indigenous communities have been core to our work in the Deed Lab. They have been our partners without whom we wouldn't have the knowledge that we would be sharing today. And they are very much at the center of this question of what is fair and what is fairness, and how can the artisan sector be fairer for everybody involved. So I'm delighted to have you here with us today, and I'm especially excited to welcome our guest, Daphna Lewinshtein. Daphna and I met when she was a student at the New School in nonprofit management, participated in one of our Deed fieldwork programs, and also worked in the lab as a research fellow, and was one of our key authors in the Fair Craft study. And once I turn it over to Daphna, I'll put some links in the chat so that you can read the results of that study. But when I asked Daphna recently how she would introduce herself, she was like, that's really complicated. So I'll tell you a bit about also introduce herself. Daphna is the Community Engagement Program Coordinator at Lush. She basically talks to organizations and decides who gets their product donations, but she also organizes sustainability events, like a large clothing initiative is one of her most interesting projects now. She's done several contract projects, such as some with fair trade organizations, including fair trade audits. And she's also a very talented ceramicist. I will drop a link also to her ceramics work, which I'm a proud owner of, and always happy to plug, especially for my former students. So thank you so much, Daphna, for joining us. Thank you for being here. And I don't know if you want to add to the introduction, or if I should go ahead and share that one slide that you prepared.
Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. No, I guess I just tell everybody where I'm standing on right now. So I'm currently in Takaronto, also known as Toronto in Canada. And I'm standing on the land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and the new credits of Mississaugas, and is now home to Inuits and Métis peoples. And yeah, there's actually
wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes,
there's a great website actually that everyone should go to. I should put it in the chat. It's
I can find it.
Our Land.
Okay,
it's
we'll
called
put
Our
it in the
Land.
Yes, I can put it in the
think.
chat in a moment.
Okay, if you just look Our Land, I think it's that. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Great. So we thought we would kick off with just a quick primer on fair trade and certifications, because as I've learned, especially through Daphna and walking through gift shows with her, there are various ways to be certified, various organizations, various bureaucracies. So we'll start with a primer. We're going to show you all one or two videos of how these organizations promote themselves. And then we'll have a conversation, a critical conversation about what we've just seen and about this term fair and the concept of fairness. Daphna?
Cool. Okay, so there's a million certifications out there, and they're all a little confusing, but basically these are the 4 main fair trade certifications and memberships. So I should have put them from right to left, but we're going to start with the black one in the middle. It's the black, it just says fair trade. So basically, okay, so this was one of the first certifications and it started in Europe, and so this is Fair Trade International. So they're all around the world, and their like counterpart in the US is Fair Trade America. Remember this part, it's Fair Trade America. So basically they certify commodities, right? So they do like coffee, chocolate, tea, soccer balls, gold, cotton, and like bananas and a couple different fruits and vegetables. But basically, so they certify from like the farm till the end product. And it's a very big certification process. It's very expensive. So what happens is the producer group, so like the farm, let's say if it's a banana, the farm has to have the certification, and then the buyer that's in the United States, they also have to have like a licensee for this fair trade product. It's very expensive. So next to it, you see Fair Trade Certified, which used to be called Fair Trade USA, and they changed their name to Fair Trade Certified like 3 years ago, I think. So basically, Fair Trade Certified, the director of, I'm not sure if he's like the CEO or director, but his name is Paul Rice. So he used to be part of Fair Trade America, and he decided that he didn't like the rules anymore for Fair Trade America. So basically he went off on his own and founded Fair Trade Certified. So they do commodities, they do the same stuff as Fair Trade America, but they now also do much more. They do like many more products. So they're doing like all types of fruits and vegetables. They're doing domestic fair trade, which is like domestic in the US. So there's like a lot of farm products that are being certified, in dairy. And actually Chobani, if you buy some like Chobani yogurt, it's fair trade certified. There's a lot of controversy over it. They also do, they certify factories. So they've now gotten into like the home goods and fashion industry. So, which I think is really cool. I think they're awesome. I love them. But if you talk to like anybody who is like a diehard fair trader, they hate them and they don't consider them fair trade. It's like, it's fascinating. Like they literally are like, they're like, they have nothing to do with fair trade whatsoever. So then going to WFTO, which is World Fair Trade Organization. So they have something called a guarantee system, which is basically like a certification, but they call it guarantee system. And they guarantee, it's like mostly it's mostly crafts. There's like a little bit of coffee. But yeah, it's mostly crafts from all over the world. They're based in the Netherlands. They have a couple organizations that they guarantee in the United States, but maybe I think it's like 3 or 4, but they're mostly like the actual like artisan groups, and they don't do like one product. They guarantee the whole organization. So I like them. It's more of like a holistic look. They're actually really cool, and they're trying to like innovate fair trade at the moment. And then if we go to the other side, to the right side, so Fair Trade Federation. So they're based in the States, and they are for North American traders. But North American only means United States and Canada, because they also have a membership base. It's not a certification, it's a membership. So they do not have membership in Mexico, which is interesting because they call it North America. So they have it's a membership based it's all organizations in the States and Canada who are basically like the buyers or the importers of the products. Some of the organizations that are the members, like let's say, I'm trying to think of one. Global Mamas. They're a clothing company. They're based in Ghana and they sell their stuff in the United States and Canada. So they're like the maker and the supplier. So they have this Fair Trade Federation membership. And also like stores can have this. So like 10,000 Villages, there's a store that sells fair trade products. Like any store that sells fair trade products, it has to be like a certain amount of products that sell in that store for it to have this membership. And that's it. So yeah, that's the rundown. Yeah, that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, the reason we're talking about fair trade is for many businesses and brands in the artisan sector, it seems to be one way or one gold standard that seems to be suggested as a way for the brands themselves to communicate an ethical framework within which they're working, and also for consumers to know that their money is being put to good use, or that the model that they're purchasing into is fair. We've already heard from Daphna's presentation that clearly she has a preference for one of those organizations over the others. Should I play the video now, Daphna? Should I do that?
Yes, totally. But they're all imperfect. Okay. Every certification is imperfect.
Right. So I'll play the this one. This video is from Fair Trade Certified, and let me make sure I click share sound. Here we go. Oh, now it's asking me for my Zoom password. Just a second. My screen?
Yeah.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You hear the audio?
Fair trade is a global movement focused on putting people and planet first. Fair trade helps connect suppliers with buyers who want to source products from farms with only the best social and environmental practices. The people who plant and harvest the food we eat face numerous health and safety threats on a daily basis. Fair trade standards help keep workers safe by providing health and safety protections, such as mandatory trainings to reduce repetitive stress injuries and pesticide exposure. Adhering to fair trade standards comes with added benefit to farming communities. For every fair trade certified product sold, the farm workers earn an additional amount of money that goes into a worker-controlled community development fund at origin to spend on projects that meet their social, economic, and environmental needs. That can include housing repairs, clean water, scholarships for children and adults, medical facilities, community centers, and more.
Vivía en una casa que es fría y no tenía tranquilidad porque igual, o sea, molestaba. Entonces acá yo estoy bien tranquila por el bienestar de mis hijos mismos, la tranquilidad y la seguridad.
Entonces allí agarramos en esa poza agua de madrugada, yo de las 3, las 4 veces que no hay agua. Yo tengo que ir a traer en la cabeza, jalándome en las manos. Estamos contentos porque ahorita tenemos agua.
Fair trade farms foster a work environment where people want to come back year after year, helping farms increase their workforce stability and reduce labor shortages. Consumers are increasingly looking for traceability in their food and seeking out companies that sell ethically sourced goods. 63% of consumers recognize the Fair Trade Certified seal. 1 in 3 consumers say they would be more likely to buy a product that is Fair Trade Certified. 79% of consumers want to know a company is mindful of practices and will become loyal customers when they are. Choose the seal that businesses and shoppers trust. Visit fairtradecertified.org to learn more.
So you said, Daphna, that that all the models have an issue with them. This video clearly tries to convince us that it is just wonderful, that we should all strive to have the fair trade certification, and that we should all as consumers make sure to purchase fair trade certification. What are some of the issues in this space around certification in these various organizations?
So many things. Okay, so with these like big certifications, it's extremely expensive. That's one. And it's sometimes like really hard to even get the certification because you have to, like, there's just different standards that aren't even, you can't, like most organizations can't even like live up to. But like this video, it makes me a little bit angry. It's very like, I feel like it goes against what DEEDS kind of stands for, right? It's very like, we are helping this impoverished community. And like, to me, fair trade is just about like, just fairness. Like, you make a product and you're gonna sell it and we're gonna buy it for a good price and you're gonna get what you should for it, right? Like, we shouldn't be showing how like fair trade shouldn't be showing how people are like living in poverty, right? And then we're like, basically it's poverty porn, right? Like what you're saying. So like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like, it's just showing people as like a victim. Also, so with fair trade certification, the model is basically like, people get paid a fair price. They're now trying to put in a living wage, but that's taking like years to put in place. WFTO is doing a much better job of putting in a living wage, but also like living wages change every 5 months, right? So that's one thing. It's like with the certification process, there's this thing called a premium, which what they explain in the video, right? And the premium is basically like a pool of money that goes back into technically the workers' hands, and the workers are supposed to decide together what they're going to do with that money together. So it's like a collective pool of money, right? But like, I just feel like this model needs to be changed, because like for us, like if I was going to be paid, so if I have a job, right? So right now, so I'm at Lush, I'm in Lush right now. And like if they said to me and a couple other like of my coworkers, we're going to have this pool of collective money. What do you want to do with it? You want to build some like, do you want like a daycare? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? I'd be like, why don't you just pay me the money? Like, why don't you just divide this up, right? Because like, I agree with it and I don't agree with it. Because at the same time, like I agree with it with some of the projects that this money has been used for, because sometimes it is used for a daycare, it is used for a house, like a healthcare facility, if they don't have it. But sometimes, like the workers are near all these facilities, and it's like, well, why aren't you just letting everyone decide what they want to do with it? Because at the same time, it is like it's supposed to be collectively of all the workers, but usually it's not. It's usually just like a couple different workers decide what it can be used for. Like, and it has been used. So it's like good things and bad things come out of it, right? So I did hear like there's like one story about a fair trade flower business in Ecuador, and they actually helped people basically with like home ownership, which is amazing, right? Because then they just pass it down from generation to generation. But sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like,
right. So in some ways, the requirements to be certified are perhaps not sufficient for, let's say, a poverty alleviation that crosses generations. So what I'm hearing you say also is that you perhaps have issue with the community development approach they're taking, which is following the charity-based model of the large global aid organizations that we all are familiar with. In my most recent article that I co-authored with economist Rafael Schaap, we have a citation in there. I'll try to find it and put it in the chat, where researchers in Ethiopia demonstrated that the lives of workers on a fair trade coffee farm were not better than the lives of workers in a non-fair trade coffee farm. So yet another example that the certification itself is not necessarily sufficient, and that there are other factors that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Sonia, I see you have a question or comment.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
So that was a very, very detailed description of all the possible certifications that we have on fair trade. But I have a question regarding the same community development fund that you mentioned. Let's say, actually, I've been very closely working with a lot of artisan community back in India. I want to know if there is a policy where, okay, let me explain this with an example. Let's say we have a group of female workers and a group of male workers and some young adults. All of these people separately might have different expectations from the development fund. Do you think they have any policies to, like, you know, for a male worker, he might expect his family insurance or like a home security. And for a female worker, the money should go into daycare, generally speaking. And also for the young adult, he might just want to save up and invest somewhere. I don't know, just for his savings to grow. So do you think they have like different policies for like each of the group that represents, or how does it work?
So they're supposed to have, so when they get everyone together to decide what to do, they're supposed to have like representatives from people from all over the business and representatives like of equally of like male and female, right? But if that happens, maybe not, right? Like I feel like a lot of voices are not heard.
Exactly, because then the
these...
representatives speak in that matter and it's not a majority decision. And even if it is, somebody would lose on something that they would want and have something else instead.
Yeah, like, so that's it. So fair trade, like the organization doesn't come in and like organize these meetings. It's up to the farm or like
the enterprise,
the business itself to organize all this, the enterprise. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think there's usually is one-sided of what people get.
I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's also an interesting irony. One of the examples that you shared, Daphna, is this idea of a daycare, a childcare. The number one rationale I hear that celebrates why it's wonderful that the artisan sector so relies on female artisans who are working in the home, as opposed to like in an office space or in some kind of other infrastructure that the brand or the company builds for them, is that what I hear is this way they can work between taking care of their children and often their husband, and they can cook and clean while they need to, and then take a break and do their craft and their weaving and this kind of thing. And so in fact, there's this kind of paradox of, should we be celebrating the informality of the sector because it meets, let's say, women where they are in their caretaking duties, but then also saying what's wonderful about this certification is that we're giving things like childcare. And in the end, and where we're getting to as a lab, I say, and now in our 15th year, is really close to asserting the future for artisans, for craft, and for their children is not through commerce-based solutions. That it is this imposition of commerce-based solutions that leads to things such as what would be fair for this community is for them to have a daycare. No, that's not what's fairer for that community. What's fair for that community is to be able to provide equitable supports that allow everyone to feel empowered and realize wherever they want to be in their own life. Some of them may want to be full-time with their kids. Some others may want the daycare. Some others may want to live in societies that don't impose child caring only on women. So there's, you know, there's also that. And so I really appreciate your question, Sonia, about how does a certification change depending on the various contexts. And I'll add another link to the chat in a moment, which is the organization Nest has created an ethical framework for handicraft workers. They moved away from the word artisan and they're using handicraft. And we're intrigued as a lab to follow it, to see if they, by creating something that is specifically for the craft sector, if perhaps they're solving a bit more closely some of these issues that we're highlighting. I'm curious, Daphna, if you could.
Sorry. Nest is a more customizable certification for smaller. It targets most of the smaller and medium enterprises of, let's say, developing nations. So I think I've only heard superficially, but yeah, I'm yet to dive deep into it. But yeah, I've heard that it's working well for small and medium enterprises.
Mm-hmm. They also have a new,
you.
it's like a home workers certificate, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
So I wanted to ask you, Daphna, because you said that WFTO was, I don't know, your favorite or the one you think is doing the work more effectively. What are the major differences that make it maybe better than some of the other certifications?
Okay, so the biggest difference is that the other certifications they certify one product. They don't certify the whole organization. And then, so with WFTO, they certify the whole organization. So basically any product that comes out of this organization or the enterprise is a guaranteed member. So that's the biggest difference, but it's more of like a holistic look. Like, it's not as rule stringent. Like they'll change, like the rules are there, but they understand that there's certain countries, certain people, like they can't do things by these like really stringent rules. And like, they're really like right now they're trying to innovate a little bit. So they started a new area of membership that's actually for like the digital world. So they're doing, it's called Digital Goes Fair Trade. So basically they just gave their first organization in Kenya. It's like a women's, it's called Digital Lions. And basically they build websites and logos and they do animation. So it's like, they're not just doing home-based crafts, right? Or like a lower seen job on many people's eyes. I don't think so at all. But like, I think making a basket is just like making a website. So I think they're the same thing. But so they're doing that, and they're also doing also another really cool organization that just got their guarantee system is called Plastics for Change. They're super cool. They're based in India, and I think they're now in Indonesia. And basically, they are doing they're helping the informal garbage like trash picker world, basically helping them get fair prices for the plastic that they pick up, which is really kind of fascinating. And then that plastic gets recycled into new bottles. Like I think the Body Shop is using some of their plastic. But yeah, I don't know, they're interesting. I like them. Of course, they're very imperfect. They have a new thing, or it's a couple years old, for domestic fair trade. And that is they started that in Europe for a couple years ago when like people started leaving Syria and all the migrants started coming into Europe. They started this new thing called the Global Northern Fair Trade Movement, which is kind of interesting. And then when you read this, like when you read the outline for it, you're like, wait, who, like, it's like you're targeting like impoverished communities, and you're like, and marginalized people, but you're like, what does that mean? And then it makes you think about fair trade just on like the global look of like, fair trade only works with impoverished communities. So
yeah, I mean, society is not fair to the poor. On the Deed Lab Instagram, we put out a little poll yesterday asking people to help us define what fair means. I'm going to read a couple of the responses we got and get your reactions, and I encourage anyone else who's here to chime in on the chat. Maybe I'll pause for a minute and have everybody think in your mind, what is fair? And the second part to the question would be, who are you to decide that something is fair to others? Or can an individual be the only one who's deciding what's fair to them? I'll just pause and see if anybody wants to write anything in the chat. So two of the responses we got to the question of what does fair mean to you? One was equal opportunities for all parties involved. That's a very interesting framing, which is not equal outcomes, but equal opportunities, with the perhaps belief that people do with an opportunity what they want or what they wish, and therefore the outcomes could differ. Maybe that's something to really unpack. And then the second one is the second definition that we got, a little bit longer. Fair naturally implies there are at least two parties involved, and both must be able to set terms and say with confidence they benefited. And so what's beautiful about that one is, in fact, it moves us from the opportunities to the outcomes. And one thing I would add to that, when this person wrote, and maybe they're here and they could just tell us that they're here, say with confidence that they benefited. That's very interesting. And in the lab, we've also interested in the notion of empowerment. One thing that I've heard from several brand founders is, and especially it came up when we were doing the fair craft study, I know that I pay fair wages because I'm paying what the artisans asked me to pay them. And so that's interesting, right? Is that really fair? The fair wage calculator tries to determine fair wage as that hourly number that is needed to be able to come out of poverty. Does an artisan know what it takes to come out of poverty? And where are we, again, that externalization of from us deciding, is it fair or is it not fair? And Bria added to the chat, thank you, Bria, giving people what they need, equity versus equality, but it's hard to know what people need exactly. And that's where I think Daphna's comment on why are we insisting again on making decisions of how to invest in communities as opposed to just giving the money and letting them invest themselves. Sol added, maybe the concept of fair is in relation with the ethical practices, but what is respect for each one? If we're taking into account multicultural diversity, it's necessary to practice active listening in order to know what is fair for each one, what is respect for each part, etc. Yes, absolutely. I think the question, who are you, who am I to decide what is fair, is a critical starting point when venturing into these questions. Yes. So yeah, do you know, Daphna, if these fair trade organizations or certifications, do they listen to the community closely, or do they come in with external people who are then auditing? How have you, what kind of work have you done with them?
Okay, so if you want one of these certificates, it's a third-party auditor, hands down. Other than the FTF, which is for the North American, basically buyers. That's just you just give FTF all your information and they give you membership. But the other ones, it's an external auditor. So for Fair Trade International.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Sorry.
So anyone can just send their information to Fair Trade?
So Fair Trade Federation,
yeah,
which is the
they
North
don't come
American,
and observe,
they don't observe. So it's a trust-based system.
Okay.
They say it's a trust-based system. So basically, if I'm buying products, so I wanted to have a membership with them like years ago, but I couldn't because I didn't sell enough products. So I used to buy and sell some products from some organizations in Burma and Bangladesh, but I didn't sell enough. So I wanted to get a membership with them. So basically I just give them all my information, like my financials, like all the information about the enterprise that I'm working with in Bangladesh, and the organization, the enterprise in Burma, and then hopefully they give me the membership. And then the price is a scale on depending how much money, like how big my business is. So the other one, so Fair Trade International and Fair Trade Certified, it's an external auditor. So that external auditor has basically done a very short course on what is fair trade and what to look for. And that is based on the ILO. Sorry, I'm like a geek with certification. So basically, they have rules and you go in and you look and you tick off the boxes. And if you find something bad, you tell them. WFTO, same thing, but it's more like they don't have too many boxes to tick. It's really like you go in as an auditor, you do a day here, you do a day here, you observe, you ask for like a little bit of the financials, and then hopefully you'll get guaranteed, right? So like as an example, so I've been to so I've done a couple audits for them. I had no auditing training. I just knew a lot about fair trade. So they asked me if I could do some. So I was like, yeah, great. I'll totally do it. It's interesting, right? To go in and see factories. I love going in and seeing factories and artisan workshops. But yeah, like a couple of them. So basically how it works is they have their rules. Sorry, this goes to also Fair Trade International. So they have their rules, but then some of the rules, you have to abide by local law, right? So an example, I went into like some factories in North Carolina. I had no idea what the laws were in North Carolina. I had to like do research on them. They're terrible. They're horrible, like absolutely horrible. Like working hours, like breaks, like you basically get a 15-minute break in an 8-hour workday. So if somebody was getting a 15-minute break, you get a check. Like it's mind-boggling crazy, right? So with that, so same thing with pay. So it has to be like the minimum wage. So in when I was there, it was like nothing. It was like $6 an hour or something, which is like unreal. I'm like, I have no clue how you would live off of that, right? Like there's no medical insurance, there's like nothing. So they all passed. Like, yeah, like I was like, what? then I had to do a write-up and basically like I do a write-up of like what I see. And then I would send it to the factory that I went to say, this is what I'm handing in. Are you okay with that? Do you have anything just to make sure this is all real, what I'm sending in? And they didn't agree with stuff they were like, whatever, just send it in. But yeah, so things like that pass. And then even like I visited so many organizations who were WFTO, like guaranteed member. And I've also visited like multiple like farms that had certification, and it's the same thing. Like you walk around and you see things and you're like, do I want to be treated like that? No. But it's like, if it passes like the legal law, like the legal local law, then it passes. Or like sometimes I'll give you some like, I was visiting an organization in Bangladesh, and it was like, I was just visiting. I wasn't there to buy anything. I was just visiting, and they were being super nice to me. They like took me on a huge tour, like multiple city tour of all of their workshops. And they're a huge organization that you've all probably seen some of their products in stores. And their stuff's beautiful, but I kept seeing things. I was like, I figured out how much people were being paid. There was this one instance where like they were making these little doilies, like little like crocheted doilies. Basically, they were snowflakes. They were supposed to be snowflakes, and they were being paid like 35 cents for like, I think it was like 5 pieces, which is outrageous because that's so bad for your hands, right? Like all these things like add up, or like safety issues, like people using like old rickety saws and just horrible stuff that would never pass here. And I would never want to work in these situations. So it's like all these things just pass, and yet it's fair. Or like, I'll just give you one more instance, like just one quick thing. So a friend of mine works at like a huge banana company. They're like they're like a huge fair trade banana company. If you look up fair trade bananas in Canada, it will come up. And they're huge here. And like they were showing, she was giving this presentation about how they're like putting all this money back into the workers and da 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 da. And I'm like, it's all like heavy lifting of like, you know, when you go to the grocery store and they have those giant boxes of bananas that weigh like 50 pounds, like, could you imagine carrying those boxes all day? So all these things, like they didn't have any carts for people. They didn't have any sort of like belts for people to put, like nothing to help them carry these boxes all day. And like, that's really bad for you, right? You would never see that here. So it's like, how does that pass? Like health?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that we have to perhaps make sure that the measures of fairness are vis-a-vis the context in which the auditor works and lives, not the local context. It is very sad, Maria, and she also was celebrating your beautiful ceramics because I shared a link to your Instagram, Daphna, in the chat.
Thank you.
So I'll turn it to Farzana, and then to have diversity of voices, we'll go to Bria, and then to Sanya. And if others have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We have about 10 minutes left. Farzana?
Hi everybody.
Hi, welcome back.
Yes, thank you. I was just trying to, add something to what Daphna was saying. I'm from Bangladesh, and I just started with an MS in strategic design at the new school. So
Cool.
yeah, I'm luckily also a fellow at the entrepreneur lab, so the Impact Entrepreneur Lab. So my project is actually to work with one of the WFTO certification organization. The Ekota Fair Trade Forum. I'm sure you must have worked with them. So yes, I would like to echo that some of the standards you see around some of the producers, it's really not something that should pass the certification standards, but yeah, there are loopholes, and how my project would aim to work with how to improve these kind of situations where people are not really maintaining the health and safety issues, or there are certain materials that are hazardous to health and to the environment, and the issues around working in gender bias and when it comes to young girls' educations and things like that, and how their labor is also integrated within the craft industry when it comes to producing craft. So these are some of the issues that I want to address through this project. So yes, this is all super relevant to what I'm looking to find out more and learn more. So yes.
Wonderful. Well, look forward to hearing. You could share your research at a future hora event. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So Bria asked in the chat, perhaps for Daphna, is there an incentive for these various organizations more to certify more and more organizations?
So I guess if you okay, let's just talk about the WFTO. So WFTO is a business, right? So when they certify organizations, that money goes back into the WFTO business because that's how they run and pay people, right? It's the same thing with, Fair Trade Certified or Fair Trade America, same thing. That money goes back into the business. But I mean, that's the thing. The more certifications they do, the bigger Fair Trade America or the Fair Trade Organization will grow. But it's at the same time, they do need to pay people, right? To have these fair trade certifications. So I guess that's the incentive, yeah.
Yeah, this whole conversation is reminding me with Valentina in the lab earlier last academic year. We were exploring if we could maybe think about a supply chain that would be based on the blockchain and how a decentralized model could in fact be a way forward, because there wouldn't be one central organization that's stamping the approval of a supply chain, but in fact it's each actor along the supply chain participating in confirming their conditions
That is cool.
Yeah,
that would be cool, but
we
then
need more
getting
funding.
Yeah.
We need more funding to pursue that. Yeah. Sanya, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I'm same as Farzana. I'm also a fall MSSTM graduate program incoming this year. So I actually I've been through a few of these audits that Daphna was talking about, in our medium scale enterprise back in India. So I think it lacks a lot of emotional quotient in terms of the artisans as well. These boxes are checked, but there's this final report that she's talking about. It's like a paragraph or an essay sent to the buyer who's trying to audit us. Maybe in that, the auditor can say that the people seem relatively happy, or in our organization, they get 3 breaks. The shortest one for a tea or a coffee break is 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, post lunch, and lunch is around 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour. So I think there are a lot of individual organizations working on it. But yeah, that's true. That format of auditing lacks the thing altogether. We have artisans working with us. We don't call them artisans. They're we're so dependent on them. They're the ones who make this organization. But yes, they kind of have been working with us for 18 and 20 years. So that quotient I think that is what it lacks. The humane in it, it has to check the factory standards, safety, cleanliness, clean water, toilets, facilities, everything. That is checked, but it does not have the humane context to it. Maybe that is what we can explore a
Yeah,
little bit
and
more in this. Yeah.
and could any of these include really elevate or empower the workers' voices, which, you know, would need to, has all complications around job security and that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think the fact that somebody's been working there for a certain amount of time, or who are the other, do the workers know each other? Are they referring friends, family? Is it multiple generations? All of those would be really interesting to track. For people watching this recording, wanted to make sure to share a comment in the chat. Fair Trade Federation verification, not certification, requires applicants to submit documentation about how the organization is meeting fair trade principles, fair wages in the local context, transparency, safety in the workplace, environmental sustainability, protecting the rights of children, etc. A screening committee reviews the info submitted, asks discerning questions, and for additional documentation if necessary. For example, demonstration that artisans are actually receiving payments. It is trust-based to an extent, but documentation is required. Yeah, thank you so much, Anne, for sharing that. What other questions may you all have? It's a good session when we leave with more questions than answers.
I have another one. I think we can also talk about community engagement in that form. Let's say where we have days at work, but they're kind of off, like they're just enjoying making community engagement somehow, like, you know, lunches, breakfasts, or whatever, like we do here as happy hours and networking events, because we do that a lot. And I think that is what the auditor missed from our audits a lot of times, like the celebrations, the young kids have their birthdays celebrated. Like we do that a lot with because we have a smaller team, so it makes sense to do that, like about 100 people.
Yeah. Yeah, the issue of scale has become really critical to this work, and with regards to the research that we've done, the larger the organizations, these models around support and fairness seem to break somewhat. Valentina?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I think also we need to keep in mind that in addition to these certifications, there are sustainability certifications, and those sometimes do include all those other factors. So maybe fair trade certifications don't focus so much in the human perspective, but the other sustainability do focus a little bit. What happened is we were talking last year with Cynthia about it, but in a lot of cases, it happens the same, where the certification kind of centralizes the information, and it's hard for them to actually see. So what happens if we kind of feed the system of the certification to say hey, I am a consumer of this product and I saw this in the factory. Will you check what happens here and review that they are actually fulfilling the standards that they say they have?
Thank you so much. That's great. Farzana?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Cynthia, if there is a space somewhere where all the upcoming topics for the next event, or the findings from each session can be found for the Deed Lab sessions.
Yeah, I'm delayed in posting the videos, but we've recorded all of the hora sessions, and we'll be sharing those on our YouTube channel and then blast them out on Instagram and through our newsletter. Yeah, so there's that. Then there's on the Deed website, there's a resources and links Google spreadsheet. Have you come across that?
Yeah.
And otherwise, these hora events, we tend to plan them just kind of as we go along, seeing what conversations are happening in the space, and or whose work we're familiar with, and or we've invited people who've attended prior ones, or who are doing work in the space to also do show and tells. But happy to keep in close contact if you would like.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. So Daphna, any parting words, anything you were like, oh, I wish I would have shared this anecdote or this story or this bit, anything else that we should share before closing today's session?
I don't know. No, I guess just that I know I've been saying a lot of bad stuff about fair trade, but it does have good, like it does really have a couple. It is good. Like it is better than most factories. Like just like one quick thing, just yeah, like they do like a lot of the WFTO members, like they do have small like get-togethers, like nice kind of like people like let's all get to know each other, like lunches and birthdays and stuff, which is really nice. And they're usually like smaller workshops when like factories, you know, they're like bigger, more institutionalized, and also a lot of factories like lock their doors, no one can get out, they have like, you know, security guards at the door, which is just like horrifying. So like that's why there's always disasters in factories. So yeah, it's you know, it is good, and people, and I've noticed like people in fair trade, they have this like pride, like a lot of workers that like I've met, like they're like, oh, we're a fair trade worker, like they do have like a lot of pride in it, and it makes people feel good. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you on that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Daphna. Thank you all so much for coming. We hope to see you at a future hora session, and thank you for being here.